Earth had always been just a small, insignificant planet in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations. Humans were primitive, their technology nowhere near as advanced as that of the alien species that ruled the stars. The galactic empires rarely paid attention to Earth, assuming that humans, with their simple ways, were too far behind to matter. They were wrong. Earth was about to become a battlefield. The fate of the galaxy would soon be shaped by this so-called primitive species. It all began on a quiet afternoon. The sun was shining over the cities of Earth, the world going about its business as usual. People were busy with their daily routines, work, school, errands. The skies were clear, but no one knew that up above, far beyond the clouds, something extraordinary was happening. A large ship, unlike anything humans had ever seen, appeared in the Earth's orbit. It was a massive warship, sleek and terrifying, with glowing engines and sharp, menacing edges. It was part of the Galactic Federation, a collection of alien species united to maintain order across the stars. But this ship wasn't there to make peace. It was fleeing. The Federation was at war with a ruthless race known as the Tyrans, who had been conquering planet after planet, leaving devastation in their wake. In a desperate attempt to escape their enemies, the Federation ship entered Earth's orbit, thinking it would be a safe haven. But they had no idea what they were walking into. The Federation ship's arrival sent shockwaves across the planet. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening, but communication from the aliens was impossible. The Federation had expected Earth to be peaceful and unaware, but their presence sparked confusion and fear. Many thought the ship was an invasion. Others feared that it was the beginning of an all-out galactic war on their doorstep. Then the Tyrans arrived. Unlike the sleek, technologically advanced Federation ship, the Tyrans' warships were huge, terrifying, and brute force machines designed for destruction. They moved swiftly, tearing through space with a violent energy that matched their reputation. They arrived without warning, blasting through the atmosphere and opening fire on the Federation ship, which was already weak from its long escape. Earth was about to be caught in the middle of a war it had never asked for. Humanity had always been divided, different countries, different cultures, different ideals. But when the sky lit up with the fire of alien weapons, everything changed. Nations that had never worked together before suddenly found themselves united in fear and confusion. The military forces of Earth, though primitive by galactic standards, began to mobilize. Some people were scared. Others were determined to fight, even though they knew their weapons were no match for the power of the invaders. Despite their differences, people all over the world banded together to defend their planet. The news was full of reports about the massive battles taking place in Earth's skies. Alien warships clashed with human-made defenses, but it was clear that the humans were outmatched. Earth's military forces were unprepared for the scale of the battle. Cities were destroyed and millions of lives were lost in the opening days of the war. Yet something unexpected began to happen as the fighting continued. Humans showed a kind of resilience that the aliens didn't anticipate. They didn't have advanced technology or superior firepower, but they had something the Tyrans and even the Federation didn't: the will to survive. Humans fought back with everything they had, using their wits, their courage, and their ability to adapt. The alien forces expected to crush them easily, but instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to back down. Captain Lucas, former soldier from a small town, was one of the first to recognize the shift in the battle. He had been stationed in a small army base in the mountains, far from the major cities, but when the war reached his doorstep, he didn't hesitate. Quickly organized a small team of soldiers and civilians, using old military tactics to fight back. They launched guerrilla strikes on the Tyran forces, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show the aliens that humanity wasn't as weak as they thought. As the weeks passed, more and more humans joined the fight. What had started as chaos began to form into something greater: a resistance. Ordinary people, from farmers to scientists, engineers to teachers, all came together. They salvaged whatever alien technology they could, attempting to understand and reverse engineer it. They weren't as fast as the aliens, but they were learning. They were adapting, and they were fighting like they had nothing to lose. The Tyrans, used to easily conquering weaker civilizations, couldn't believe what was happening. They had underestimated humanity, thinking they were just a primitive species. They soon learned that Earth's people had a power that no one could have predicted, the ability to unite under pressure, to fight for their home, and to adapt in ways that no alien race could. While the Federation was still trying to figure out how to help, Captain Lucas and his team became symbols of the new human strength. They proved that even the smallest, most underestimated species could become a powerful force when pushed to the brink. Earth was not a helpless planet. It was a battleground, but it was also a place of unexpected hope. The first contact had sparked a war, but it had also sparked something far more powerful, the beginning of humanity's rise. As Earth's skies were filled with the flashing lights of alien weapons, humans knew they were facing something far bigger than anything they had ever imagined. The war was unlike any conflict they had ever fought before. This wasn't just a battle for territory or resources, it was a fight for survival, and the odds were stacked against them. But despite the overwhelming power of the Tyrans and the uncertainty of their future, humanity refused to surrender. In the first few days of the war, the Federation's help seemed like it might turn the tide. They sent their best officers, experts in combat and diplomacy, to assist Earth's leaders in organizing a defense. But the Federation's technology, while advanced, was not enough to make up for Earth's lack of preparation. Their ships were powerful, but they couldn't fight the Tyrans alone. And Earth's own military, though brave, lacked the advanced training and weapons to stand a chance against such a ruthless enemy. Yet, it was the humans' determination and ability to adapt that began to change the tide. Without advanced technology. To match the Tyrans' power, Earth's people relied on something else: their resourcefulness. The military had always been known for its ability to innovate under pressure, and now, with the future of their world on the line, the ingenuity of ordinary humans began to shine through. The resistance started small. It began with groups of soldiers, scientists, engineers, and even civilians who had seen the destruction in their cities and decided to fight back. They didn't wait for the Federation's slow-moving help. They took matters into their own hands. They gathered the wreckage of destroyed alien ships, pulling out any usable technology they could find. They worked in secret, rebuilding and adapting the pieces of alien tech to their own needs. Captain Lucas, who had once been an ordinary soldier, became one of the most influential leaders of the resistance. He had always been a strategist, thinking outside the box, but the war had tested his limits. Yet every time they lost, he found a new way to strike back. Lucas and his team learned how to disable Tyran ships using simple traps and well-placed explosives. They didn't have the sophisticated weapons the Tyrans did, but they had something better. They had the will to fight, and they used that to outsmart the enemy at every turn. Humanity's ability to adapt quickly was something the Tyrans couldn't understand. Their alien minds had underestimated Earth's primitive nature, not realizing that when pushed, humans could become an unstoppable force. As the resistance grew, so did their methods. They launched attacks on key Terran supply lines, using Earth's terrain to their advantage. The Tyrans, for the first time in this war, were caught off guard. The resistance wasn't just about fighting the Tyrans, it was about saving their world. And with each successful mission, humanity's confidence grew. People who had never held a weapon in their life were suddenly fighting on the front lines. Ordinary farmers, teachers, and doctors all joined the cause, transforming from civilians into soldiers, determined to protect their homes. Earth's new resistance groups became a network of individuals working together for a common goal. Small cells of fighters communicated through hacked communications channels, sharing vital information and coordinating their attacks. These groups would strike quickly, disappear into the shadows, and then regroup for the next mission. Had no idea what hit them. They were used to overwhelming force, not stealthy, unpredictable human fighters. But despite their successes, the war wasn't without losses. Many cities were destroyed, millions of lives were lost, and families were torn apart. Yet even in the face of tragedy, humanity found a way to stand tall. They were fighting for their homes, their families, and their future, and they would never back down. The Federation began to recognize that Earth's people were not as weak as they had once thought. The humans were not just surviving, they were fighting back with a strength that could change the galaxy. The Federation officers who had arrived to help started to admire the humans' ability to learn from their mistakes and adapt quickly. They saw that while humans were still far behind technologically, their creativity and determination made them a force to be reckoned with. The war was far from over, but the human resistance had made a name for themselves. They weren't just defending their planet anymore, they were becoming a symbol of hope for other races who had been oppressed by the Tyrans. As news of humanity's bravery spread, other planets began to send aid to Earth's resistance, hoping to join forces and take down the Tyrans once and for all. As Captain Lucas looked out at the group of soldiers gathered around him, he knew this was only the beginning. Humans had come a long way in a short amount of time. They'd gone from being seen as primitive, weak, and insignificant to becoming the heart of the fight against the Terran Empire. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors, leaders, and heroes. The resistance had awakened the spirit of humanity, and now it was time to take the fight to the Tyrans in full force. Earth would not fall, and the galaxy would soon realize that humans were not to be underestimated anymore. As the war raged on, something began to change on Earth. What started as small pockets of resistance grew into a massive movement. It was all thanks to one thing: humanity's ability to adapt and survive. The Tyrans, who had once thought of humans as a primitive species, began to realize that Earth's people were far more capable than they had imagined. Humans were not just fighting, they were winning. In the early days of the war, humans had relied on makeshift weapons and basic tactics. But as the months passed, they began to understand more about the alien technology they had scavenged. Engineers and soldiers worked tirelessly, learning how to use the Federation's advanced weapons and Tyron ships technology. With each breakthrough, the humans grew stronger, more confident, and more prepared. Captain Lucas, now recognized as one of the leading strategists of the human resistance, knew that this war was not about matching the Tyrants' power. It was about using what they had learned and turning their weaknesses into strengths. While the Tyrans fought with overwhelming force, humanity fought with intelligence, creativity, and heart. Lucas and his team began to develop new strategies that used the environment to their advantage. They had no choice but to rely on Earth's natural landscapes, forests, mountains, deserts, and oceans, because they didn't have the luxury of space fleets or advanced technology to match the enemy. But in those environments, humans excelled. They set traps, ambushed Tyran convoys, and used guerrilla tactics to wear down the invaders. It was a slow and difficult process, but every victory, no matter how small, was a victory for the human race. One of the turning points in the war came when Lucas's team discovered how to disrupt the Tyrans' communications network. The Tyran Empire, known for their vast military coordination, relied heavily on their advanced technology to stay connected across the galaxy. But once the humans learned how to hack into their systems, the Tyrans' unity began to crumble. Without their ability to coordinate attacks and share information, the Tyrans were left disoriented and scattered, allowing humans to strike at their weakest points. It was during one of these strikes that the human resistance gained its first major victory against the Tyrans. Lucas's team led an attack on a Tyran supply base, a crucial point that provided the enemy with food, ammunition, and reinforcements. The base was heavily guarded, but the humans had learned how to use the environment to their advantage. They snuck in under the cover of darkness, using the terrain to move undetected. The Tyrans were caught completely off guard. The humans infiltrated the base, disabled the weapons, and set explosives. By the time the Tyrans realized what was happening, it was too late. The explosion tore through the base, and the humans emerged victorious. Capturing crucial supplies and inflicting serious damage on the Tyran war effort, It wasn't a large-scale battle, but it sent a powerful message. Humans could not be underestimated. The Federation, still trying to support Earth, was amazed at the humans' ingenuity. They had always seen humanity as a young, inexperienced species, but now they were starting to believe that Earth's people could be a major player in this war. The Federation began to send more advanced technology and weaponry. But it was clear that the humans weren't relying on that alone. They had developed their own methods of warfare. Their confidence was growing. News of humanity's successes spread across the galaxy. Other planets, once hesitant to join the fight, began to see the humans as a symbol of hope. If these primitive beings could rise up and challenge the mighty Tyrans, then maybe their own oppressed planets had a chance too. Slowly, alliances began to form. The humans were no longer just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for freedom across the galaxy. But even as humanity gained ground, the war was far from over. The Tyrans were not easily defeated. Their ruthless nature and sheer power made them formidable foes. And yet there was one thing the Tyrans didn't have: the human spirit. The humans had something the Tyrans could never understand: emotion. The drive to protect their loved ones in their homes. While the Tyrans fought for conquest, humans fought for survival, for their future, for their world. This emotional connection to Earth and each other made them stronger than any alien could ever imagine. Captain Lucas saw this every day in his soldiers and in the civilians who joined the resistance. They didn't need advanced technology or alien weaponry to know what they were fighting for. They fought for their families, for their planet, and for the future of their children. That was the edge humanity had over the Tyrans. The war was becoming a battle of willpower. The Tyrans had the firepower, but the humans had the heart. As the human resistance grew stronger, they began to understand that their greatest weapon was not the alien technology they had scavenged, but their unbreakable will to survive. In the final stages of the battle for Earth, Captain Lucas stood before his fellow soldiers, looking out at the ruined battlefield. The Tyrans were retreating, but the cost had been high. Cities were in ruins, and many lives had been lost. Yet Lucas knew that Earth had already won. The humans had proven that they were no longer just a primitive species. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and no matter what came next, they would fight until the very end. The war for Earth was far from over, but something had shifted. Humanity, once thought to be weak and insignificant, had proven that they were capable of much more than anyone had imagined. The resistance that started with a few small groups had now grown into a powerful force. The Tyrans, who had once seemed unstoppable, were beginning to falter. But this was only the beginning. The battle for Earth was only one piece of a much larger war, and now humans had a place in it. With their first major victory under their belts, humanity's resolve grew stronger. The Federation, who had initially seen Earth as a minor player in galactic politics, now realized they had underestimated the humans. They had watched as Earth's people fought back with nothing but their courage and their ingenuity, and they began to see humans as more than just survivors. They were warriors. The Federation began to send more resources to Earth ships, weapons, and technology that had been too valuable to share at the start. But Earth's resistance didn't rely on advanced weapons alone. It learned how to fight on their own terms, using the planet's environment to their advantage. The humans were no longer just trying to defend their world. They were beginning to fight for something much bigger. Other planets, once hesitant to get involved, began to take notice. The Tyrans had conquered many worlds, leaving them in ruins, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. And now, there was a spark of hope. Alien races that had been oppressed by the Tyrans saw the humans as a symbol of resistance. They began to offer support, sending soldiers, ships, and supplies to join the fight against the Tyrans. Slowly, the war was turning into a galactic effort. With Earth at the center, Captain Lucas, who had risen from an ordinary soldier to one of the most important leaders of the resistance, stood before his people, rallying them for what lay ahead. The battle for Earth had been won, but the galaxy was still under threat. The Tyrans had many worlds under their control, and they weren't going to give up without a fight. But Lucas knew that with the strength of humanity and, now, the support of their new allies, there was hope. The resistance had evolved. It was no longer just about protecting Earth. It was about saving the galaxy from the tyrant empire. Humanity's heart, their will to fight for freedom, had become a rallying cry for the oppressed. As Lucas looked around at his fellow fighters, he saw not just the faces of Earth's people, but of many others aliens who had once been afraid to stand up to the tyrants. Now, united with humans in their fight, one of the turning points came. When humans and their new allies launched a coordinated attack on a Tyran stronghold deep in enemy territory, it was a risky move. The Tyrans had fortified their position, and their military might was overwhelming. But humanity's strategy was simple. Hit them hard and fast. With everything they had, the battle was fierce, with explosions shaking the ground and the sky lit up with energy blasts from both sides. But the humans fought with a purpose, with a fire in their hearts. They knew what they were fighting, for freedom, peace, and the future of their children. They had something the Tyrans could never understand, the power of determination. As the battle raged, the human resistance used their knowledge of Tyrant technology and tactics to infiltrate the enemy's defenses. They sabotaged supply lines, disabled key weapon systems, and launched surprise attacks from unexpected directions. It wasn't just about brute force it was about intelligence. It's about using every advantage they could find. The Tyrans once, so confident in their dominance, were now on the defensive. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The humans, though still outgunned, were using their creativity and resourcefulness to turn the tide of the war. The Tyrans could not keep up with the humans' ability to adapt, to change their strategies, and to keep pushing forward no matter the cost. In the end, the Terran stronghold was taken, and the humans, along with their allies, emerged victorious. It was a major win for the Resistance, and it sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Tyrans had lost one of their most strategic positions, and it was clear that humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Federation, now fully aware of humanity's capabilities, began to offer more than just weapons. They offered knowledge, training, and alliances with other alien races. Earth was no longer a small primitive. World-It was a center of resistance, a symbol of hope for the galaxy. But even as the humans celebrated their victory, they knew that the war was far from over. The Tyrans were not easily defeated, and their empire stretched far beyond what the humans had seen. There was still much to be done, and many battles to fight. But for the first time since the war began, humanity knew they had a chance. Captain Lucas stood on the battlefield, watching as his fellow soldiers celebrated the hard-won victory. He knew that the future was uncertain, but he also knew that humanity had proven something powerful to the galaxy, that they would never give up. No matter how overwhelming the odds, as the stars looked down on the Earth, the humans had made their mark on the galaxy. They were no longer seen as primitive. They were seen as a force that could change the course of history. And for the first time, the Tyrans understood that they had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The war for Earth had come a long way. What began as a fight for survival had now turned into a battle for the galaxy's future. Humans, once seen as weak and unprepared, had proven their strength and resilience. They had shown the galaxy that even the most underestimated species could rise up and challenge the most powerful enemies. But as the war continued, one thing became clear. Humanity was no longer just defending their home. They were leading a movement that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. Captain Lucas stood at the front of the newly formed Human Federation, his eyes scanning the horizon as the final battle with the Tyrans loomed closer. Earth had been changed forever by the war, but the galaxy had been changed as well. The human resistance had become a symbol of hope for other oppressed worlds. They had inspired countless alien species to stand up to the Tyrans and fight for their freedom. What started as a defense of Earth had now become a united struggle for the survival of all, the Tyrans. Once the feared conquerors of the galaxy had been forced to retreat, Earth's victory had ignited a fire in the hearts of those who had long suffered under Terran rule. The humans, with their unmatched determination, had proven that even the strongest empires could be toppled. And now, with their allies joining the fight, the galaxy had a chance to rid itself of the tyrants once and for all. The Human Federation, formed from the ashes of Earth's resistance, was not just a military force, it was a new hope. Lucas knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Tyrants would not go down without a fight. But Earth had already proven that they could achieve the impossible. They had turned a planet once considered insignificant into the heart of a galactic revolution. And now, it was time to finish what they had started. The final push to rid the galaxy of the tyrants would require every ounce of strength the humans and their allies had. Lucas and his team began to plan the most daring assault yet, a full-scale attack on the Tyran homeworld. It would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. But Lucas knew it was the only way to ensure that the Tyrans would never again threaten the galaxy. The time for defense was over. It was time to take the fight to the enemy's doorstep. The Federation fleet, now made up of human and alien ships, began to assemble. The Tyran homeworld was heavily guarded, its defenses impenetrable to most armies. But the humans had learned how to fight against impossible odds, and they had developed new tactics that even the Tyrans hadn't anticipated. They would use their knowledge of Tyran technology and their experience in guerrilla warfare to infiltrate the enemy's defenses and strike where they were weakest. As the fleet gathered, Lucas spoke to the soldiers who would lead the charge. His voice was steady, but there was a fire in his eyes that inspired everyone around him.
Oh.
"This isn't just about Earth anymore," he said. "This is about every world, every species, every life that the Tyrans have destroyed. We fight not just for survival, but for the future. We fight because we know that no one should live in fear. The Tyrans may be strong, but we are stronger. And together, we will win." The final battle was set. The Tyrans had no idea what was coming. The humans, with their allies at their side, launched their attack with everything they had. The skies over the Tyran homeworld were filled with explosions as human and alien forces clashed with the enemy. The Tyrans fought with everything they had, but they could not match the sheer determination of the human forces. The humans had been underestimated for too long, and now they were proving their worth. The battle raged for hours, with the humans pushing forward, fighting with a fury that the Tyrans had never seen before. Lucas led the charge, his tactical brilliance guiding the resistance through wave after wave of enemy defenses. The human fleet, though smaller and less advanced, fought with an intensity that shook the Tyrans to their core. Finally, after hours of fighting, the human forces breached the Tyran capital. The Tyran leaders, cornered and defeated, surrendered. The victory was complete. The galaxy had been freed from the Tyrans' grip, and Earth had played the leading role in their downfall. But Lucas knew that this victory was not just about the Tyrans' defeat, it was about what the humans had accomplished. They had gone from being a small, insignificant planet to leading the charge in a galactic revolution. The human spirit, their ability to adapt and survive, had become a beacon of hope for every oppressed world in the galaxy. As Lucas stood before the fallen Tyran leaders, he looked out at the galaxy, knowing that the future was bright. The fight had been long, and the cost had been great. But Earth had proven something important. They were not just survivors, they were warriors. And they had changed the galaxy forever. The Human Federation stood at the forefront of a new era. The galaxy was no longer divided by fear and oppression. It was united by the courage and determination of the humans, who had shown that even the most unlikely species could rise up and change the world. And as Lucas looked out at the stars, he knew that this was just the beginning. The human race had come a long way, and their journey was far from over.